Are you going on a date tonight? If so, do you know what to look for? I mean, how will you know if you've met the one? Are you dating with a plan, a set of distinct elements to look for? Or are you just rolling with the experience, hoping that you'll know it when you find it? These are important questions. How do you think you're going to find a great relationship if you don't even know what to look for? You could meet Mr. Fantastic or Miss Attila the Honey and not be able to know the difference. That is a pretty scary thought. If we're going to talk about effective dating, then maybe we best start by discussing the purpose of a first date. Between getting seated at the table and when the check arrives, what are you hoping to accomplish? Well, you might say, well, Troy, I guess I'm looking for attractive. I should be attracted to my date. And chemistry. Yes, seeing if people have any chemistry is a good reason to meet. And maybe during the evening, we'll figure out what we have in common. If there's some attraction and chemistry and common ground, then that's probably a really good first date. Attraction, chemistry, and matching are the typical dating goal. And on the surface, they seem to make sense. Daters need that in-person experience to determine whether they like each other. The big question: is chemistry, attraction, and matching the right thing to be looking for? It might be the typical criteria for the date, but is it the right one? To answer that question, we have to look at where relationships that start with chemistry, attraction, and matching end up. I'm not just talking about in a couple weeks or months. I want to know what happens to their relationships years, decades down the line. There's a really long-winded dissertation to this question, but I'll try to keep it short. Chemistry and attraction causes the butterflies to fly. You might think these things happen when you've met someone who potentially might be right for you. And part of that is true. A couple needs chemistry and attraction as a viable component of relationships. But the trouble begins when chemistry and attraction are at the core of the relationship. Imagine two people meeting. We'll call them Mr. Oil and Miss Vinegar. They meet and boy are they attracted to each other. Somewhere during the date, they get some nice sparks flying. The chemistry is really working. They do a little comparison to see what they have in common. They're both liquidy, they're a little oily, they both love glass bottles, and they both go great over salad. Hey, we've got quite a lot in common. Their relationship takes off with a lot of high energy excitement. Mr. Oil and Miss Vinegar really shake it up, and they find that they blend well together. Yeah, they've got a few differences, but those are largely ignored because everything seems to be going so well. They get engaged, then married, and then life begins to settle down. They aren't shaking the bottle quite as hard. And you know what? The oil and the vinegar begin to separate. They find that they aren't as well matched as they first thought, so they need to work at their relationship to keep it really well blended. No problem. Relationships are supposed to be work, right? But later, after decades of working to keep the relationship blended, they just get tired. They don't really want to work on those mismatches that were initially masked by the chemistry and attraction. Pretty soon, they stop working. They stop shaking. And Mr. Oil and Miss Vinegar completely separate. No big surprise. It happens to half of the couples. So what happened? Where did this all go wrong? Mr. Oil and Miss Vinegar's problem started way back at the first date. It actually started before the first date, but that's a completely different Troy talk. Instead of the first date being about discovering chemistry and attraction, it should have been about discovering if they shared a deep connection. Notice I didn't say build a connection. I mean to discover if the daters already share a deep connection. The first date is a vehicle for uncovering that connection. Chemistry and attraction are biological, and those matching in common elements, they're usually superficial. Biology and superficiality are not good indicators of long-term love. Connection, however, comes from sharing the same heart and the same soul. It's about connecting at the deepest levels. The mirror effect says that when two people share the same heart and soul and mind, that is to say, when their two people are extremely alike, that alikeness provides a profound, deep, peaceful, grounded connection. There's no biology in that description. There's no superficial matching. I'm talking about two people who are not oil and vinegar, but who are both water, a deep, natural sameness and affinity. Both being water means that they share the same dreams, the same deep thoughts, the same perspectives, the same longings. And that leads to deep connection, a deep, lasting love bond. Because nothing is masked by biology, it's easy to see whatever differences exist, so it's much easier to decide whether this is the right person for you. Connection is step 3 of the 6 steps. Now, the trick to finding the person who already shares that connection with you is to follow steps 1 and 2 first. I'll let Troy talk more about those later. What's your takeaway? The takeaway is that attraction and chemistry will lead you in the wrong direction. When you're on your date, when you're on your first date, look for that deep, peaceful, grounded connection. That will lead you in the right direction.